Thanks, Goose. Rare Replay is a collection of 30 games that spans Rare's history, from their very first game before they were even called Rare, right through to some of their more recent efforts on the Xbox 360.
We've seen plenty of remasters and collections recently, but this one feels unique in its breadth. If you'll pardon the pun, it's quite rare to see one developer put so much of its history into one game.
It is worth noting, though, that the studio does have a catalogue of well over 100 games, so there are still plenty of games missing. And due to various licensing issues, there's no sign of their Donkey Kong games, and there's no GoldenEye. Oh, which is such a shame, because I think we can all agree that's some of Rare's best work.
Yeah, also none of their Kinect sports games are here either. I don't think anyone's going to be upset about that.
No. Well, let's dive in and talk about the games that are actually here, and I suppose we should start with the oldest games in the collection.
Yes, and I'm just going to say it, Hex, everything before Battletoads is rubbish.
Oh, I think that seems pretty harsh, Banjo. I mean, some of these games are from the 80s, and, you know, they were well received at the time.
Yes, and they have not aged well. I admit I didn't spend a lot of time with many of them because they're just awful. I mean, what's going on here? What's this about? Quite frankly, I don't want to know.
Yeah, some of them are a little difficult to get your head around. But I did like that they've given you the ability to rewind the games up to a minute, though, which really takes the edge off a lot of that brutal old-school difficulty.
Oh, playing these old games always reminds me just how hard they used to be, and that rewind is just so good. In fact, it's the only thing that can help these old, tired gaming hands get through something as tough as Battletoads.
Your hands are... oh, yeah, they're pretty old.
There's a lot of cracks.
Moisturise.
Inside my joints.
Yeah. Also, they have modifiers to give you infinite lives if you just want to straight up cheat your way through. And there's save states too, so you won't lose your progress when you quit out.
And I did like the idea of the snapshots mode. They're basically bite-sized challenges of all the older games, which remixes them into something much more digestible. But even so, for most of the games, just one snapshot was enough for me.
Oh, they're not all that bad, Banjo.
No, that's true. I did quite like the RC Pro games. And Cobra Triangle was fun. And I did appreciate having all these games here. It's nice to be able to go back and play through their history to see how they've evolved over the years. You might not want to play them all again, but it's just nice to see the studio's evolution. And any chance to play Battletoads, Hex, and I'll take it.
Yeah, they definitely deserve credit for embracing their history, good and bad. And, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have really fond memories of some of those older games who are really going to get a kick out of playing them again.
Once you move to the Nintendo 64 era, things really pick up. I never actually had an N64, and I skipped over a lot of the remakes except for Perfect Dark. So I was quite keen to see what all the fuss was about with these Banjo-Kazooie games and spend some real time with them, and they're actually quite good platformers, aren't they?
Wow, he's late to the party, Banjo. But yeah, they are some of the best platformers of all time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And how good is Blast Corps? Such a simple idea. You just smash through buildings to clear the way for an unstoppable runaway truck loaded with nuclear weapons. It's great. Jet Force Gemini, though, wasn't a fan of that one. Third-person controls have come a long way, and this was just...
Yeah, that is a slightly more difficult one to go back to. But they did patch in some more modern controls, which made it a bit easier to try. Well, a lot easier, actually. On default, I was just rolling around with no idea what I was doing. What did you think of Conker?
Well, the platforming is a bit stilted compared to Banjo, and the references are quite dated now. But overall, it still holds up pretty well, and I'm always partial to a good poo joke or two, Hex, which it more than delivers on.
It's up my butt.
Your butt.
My butt.
Your butt.
That's right, my butt.
Ugh.
My butt. My butt.
Yeah, it's a game that lives or dies by its humour, which is definitely on the crass and juvenile side. I can't get that cow with explosive diarrhea out of my brain. It's just going to be in there forever. But if you like that sort of thing, it's the game for you.
There's also Killer Instinct, which was one of my all-time favourite fighters as a kid. So many combos, Hex. And there's Rare's one and only original Xbox game, Grabbed by the Ghoulies, which I did not like. Good title, though.
Yeah, it does get a bit repetitive and the QuickTime events are overused, but it is also aimed at younger audiences who I think will enjoy this kind of haunted house, Scooby-Doo-esque vibe.
I don't know, Hex. Kids these days are into Slender Man and Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah.
This might be a little bit too tame.
Well, moving on to the Xbox 360 era of Rare games, and things are even more of a mixed bag. Perfect Dark Zero is a bit of a mess of a shooter with clunky controls and a pretty uninspired campaign. I quite liked Kameo though. Its bright visuals still hold up well and there's a fun adventure game in there.
Have to admit, I still enjoy the Viva Piñata games. At first they always seemed kind of dumb, but before I knew it I'd lost hours into my little virtual garden of candy creatures. Gotta catch 'em all, Hex?
I don't know, they just didn't really grab me, to be honest. And I know people really loved these games, but they were just a bit slow and aimless for my liking. They are very colourful and charming games to look at, though.
Hurry up, you incompetent code monkey! I have Piñata to capture!
Moving on to the final game in the collection, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts.
Yes. Now, this understandably disappointed a lot of Banjo fans when it was released because it isn't really a Banjo-Kazooie game. Instead, it's a sort of vehicle construction game. But it's actually a pretty good sort of vehicle construction game.
Yeah, it's decent, but that frame rate, Hex, borderline unplayable.
Oh, it's bad, sure, but I don't think it's unplayable.
So bad. What did you think of the overall presentation, though?
Amazing. I love that whole little musical number when you start it up, and there's a whole lot of extra content to unlock.
I did some of the voices for Banjo then, and then it transformed into the gargled noise at the end, so the
It seems like a lot of work to unlock them all, and it's probably just easier watching them online. What did you think of the split between on-disc games and ones you have to download?
Well, that is a little confusing. So all their pre-Nintendo 64 games are in the main game. But their 64 games that got remastered for 360, like Banjo and Perfect Dark, are separate downloads. But most 64 games are in the main game, while all 360 games are also separate downloads.
Yeah, something to keep in mind. You'll have to download about 40 gig if you want to play everything. What did you think overall, Hex?
Well, I think it's a collection of games that's going to mean different things to different people depending on what games they grew up with. But no matter how you look at it, it's great value, so I'm giving it 4.
Yeah, there's some truly awful games here that don't stand up at all, but there's enough great ones to make this worthwhile, so I'm giving it 4 too.
I tried to command my warriors to stop her, but before I even blinked an eye, this massive troll caught me off guard.
A massive troll? It is worse than I feared.